Everything that fighter pilots, tacticians, and engineers learned about air combat in the last 50 years has been distilled into the F-22 Raptor, the Air Force's fighter for the 21st century. The lessons learned the hard way in Korea, Vietnam, and places like the Bekaa Valley of Lebanon, the pricelessness of superior situational awareness and agility, shooting before being seen, fooling or eluding ground threats, reliability, speed is life, have been translated into about 34,000 pounds of titanium, aluminum, and wonder materials that fly like a dream. Super fast and maneuverable, stealthy, and providing its pilot with instantly comprehensible information about everything going on around him, the F-22 incorporates so many fighter firsts that it will be the benchmark of air combat power for at least a quarter century. Almost every year since the program's inception, however, the F-22 has been hounded by budget cutters in Congress and the Pentagon who question the Air Force's need for such a powerful fighter. Especially now, with defense budgets at near historic post-war lows, critics hold the Raptor up as a prime example of an expensive program that doesn't know the Cold War is over, a case of technological overkill for the fighter threats that may pop up in the coming decade. The F-22 program has been cut, delayed, or restructured so many times in the last 7 years that most observers have lost count. Originally pegged at a buy of 750 airplanes, the planned inventory slipped to 650, then 600, then 442, and now, with the Quadrennial Defense Review, 339, slightly more than 3 wings worth. As the buy has descended, unit cost has climbed, and some members of Congress worry that the F-22 may price itself out of existence. As Senator John Glenn, D. Ohio, recently remarked in a Senate Armed Services Committee hearing, we must be vigilant that the program not go the way of previous programs, such as the B-2, where the sticker shock overwhelms the capability improvements. To underline the point, Congress has imposed a $40.9 billion program cost cap on the F-22, much as was done with the B-1B and B-2 programs. If the project exceeds the cap, the Air Force must fund the overage from other accounts. With the reduced buy, the Pentagon also cut the peak production rate of the F-22 from 48 per year to 36 a year, reduced the engine buy from 1,027 to 777, and cut the initial production batch from 70 to 58 aircraft. Far from overkill, Air Force leaders do not see the F-22 as overkill. Far from it. Instead, they see the airplane as simply having the power to deliver what the nation has come to expect: total control of the air in any armed conflict involving U.S. forces, rather than an answer to the new generation of highly capable and even somewhat stealthy fighters now coming into service around the world, such as the Russian Su-37, French Rafale, and F-2000. The Raptor is designed to counter the airplanes and missiles that will come after them. We are not building the F-22 for the threats we face in 2000 or 2005, asserted Major General, Cell. Bruce A. Carlson, Director of Operational Requirements, USAF's Deputy Chief of Staff for Air and Space Operations. We are building it for the threats we will face in 2020, when large numbers of F-22s will be in the force. Carlson noted that the F-15, USAF's current top air superiority fighter, was designed in the 1960s, tested and produced in the 1970s, upgraded in the 1980s, and finally did battle on behalf of the U.S. in the Gulf War of 1991. There it racked up an impressive tally of 29 air-to-air kills with no losses, against state-of-the-art MiG-29s and other capable fighters. Likewise, the F-22 will have to be able to dominate the battle space well into its middle-age years. We don't have the resources for building a new fighter every 5 to 10 years, Carlson said. We don't want to come back from a battle in 2010, with our tail between our legs and say, well, we just didn't want to spend the money on a real capable fighter, back in the 1990s. The F-15 dominated during its lifetime, and the F-22 is being designed to do the same thing, he added. There is no point in building a match for today's best potential enemy fighters, Carlson said. The Air Force needs an airplane that can defeat large numbers of enemy airplanes swiftly and overwhelmingly. Parity has arrived. The question is, are there planes out there right now that can threaten us? And the answer is, yes, Carlson said. With the F-15, we're at parity right now, with the Russian Flanker family of airplanes, which have unnervingly good acceleration, range, radar power, and agility. Put a good missile on that plane, and it becomes a hell of a threat to most of our aircraft in the F-15, he continued. Moreover, the Flanker has been licensed to other countries, so they will show up in more and more places. As for the MiG-29, he said, they're everywhere. Russia is selling them cheap. As time passes, better fighters are showing up in many places where the US might get into a fight, and there's no telling who the Eurofighter or Rafale may be sold to. The USAF emphasis on expeditionary operations will make it more difficult for the F-15 to dominate as time goes on and the new threat airplanes multiply in number. When I go to war, I'm an expeditionary force, Carlson said. Because of worldwide commitments, perhaps, I can only take a wing and a half of F-22s to a hot spot. Since even a fairly small air force can afford to buy 2 wings worth of top-line fighters that can match the F-15, the air battle could be a draw, with disastrous consequences for an American ground force at the end of a long supply line from the continental US. If you're at parity, you're not going to win big, and you're not going to guarantee air dominance to the theater commander, so you can land troops and equipment on the shore, Carlson said. We don't want to lose to some third-rate air force just because they happen to live close to the fight and can throw a few wings of good airplanes at us, he asserted. The F-22 is not only needed in order to be able to win in an expeditionary mode where it will likely be outnumbered. The F-15 is now out of production and getting old. Its age and associated problems, airframe stress, corrosion, water intrusion, and so forth, will only get worse as time goes on. We don't have much option but to replace the F-15s, according to General Michael E. Ryan, Air Force Chief of Staff. The F-15 has numerous geriatric problems, Ryan said, and given that we have to keep them for at least another decade as the F-22 is tested, refined, and produced, it worries you. The average age of fighters in the Air Force is creeping toward 20 years, Ryan noted. We've never had an average age in our fighter fleet of 20 years, and we'll get there before we turn it around, he said. That's going into territory we haven't been in before. If the F-22 is further delayed, it would pose enormous problems for the Air Force, Ryan said. Fighter aircraft are built for a certain number of service hours on the airframe. And after that, we have to do almost a remanufacture of the airplane to put it back in flying condition because of the stress and strain of the fighter maneuvers, he explained. The Air Force has not budgeted a remanufacturing effort for the F-15 because it would be highly expensive and do nothing to increase its capability to meet modern threats, particularly those posed by ground defenses and surface-to-air missiles. We screw around with the F-22 program anymore and cut it, and unit costs go up significantly, Ryan said. Economically, it doesn't make any sense to take it down any lower. Rising risk. The Air Force has been criticized by some members of Congress who pointed out that the service backed away from its previous insistence that 4 wings 442 airplanes was absolutely the lowest number with which it could accomplish the mission of fighting 2 near simultaneous major theater wars. In the Quadrennial Defense Review, the Air Force acceded to a program cut to only 339 airplanes, or about 3 wings. Ryan acknowledged that the risk goes up with a smaller buy, but that the proposal was based on scenarios revolving around a U.S. operation in Southwest Asia at the same time it was involved in one in Northeast Asia. We have force-sized ourselves on those 2 regional contingencies, and then our hedge against the unknown on force size is making sure that what we have is quality capability, Ryan noted. If 1.5 wings of F-22s looks to be insufficient, Ryan said the Air Force might convert some of the youngest F-15E strike airplanes to an air superiority role to supply the missing 4th wing. The airplanes would not be first in types, leaving that mission to the stealthy F-22, but could be pylon airplanes, patrolling the airspace after enemy fighters and air defenses have been largely suppressed. In addition, Ryan observed that the F-22 production line need not shut down at 339 airplanes, especially if world events dictate a larger force. Ryan observed that the F-117 and F-15E strike airplanes will need replacement before the F-22 line closes, and the Raptor, modified for a broader ground attack capability, might be the best solution to replacing them. General Richard E. Hawley, commander of Air Combat Command, told reporters in Washington recently that the F-22, built for punishing air combat and stealth, equal to or even better than that of the F-117, might make it a natural to replace that airplane. And, just as the F-15E retains all of the dogfighting prowess of the F-15C, the dedicated strike version of the F-22 could augment the air superiority force